Our mission was, I call it ash and trash, beans and bullets. We would pick up troops and we'd insert them into a landing zone someplace. Sometimes it was hot, sometimes it wasn't. And once you drop off your troops, then the next phase was to resupply those troops. So then you'd bring in the bullets and the beans and the food to make sure they had something to eat, and bring in all their gear so they could survive the night or whatever it was that they were doing. We had a crew of 4. We had a gunner, a crew chief. Crew chief was school trained in Alabama, and then a pilot and co-pilot. At that time I was a co-pilot, call him a Peter pilot. And if you were in an insertion, they normally would have artillery that would fire into the area before you got there. And then you had a couple of gunships. At the time when I got there, we didn't have Cobra gunships. We had Charlie model and B model aircraft for gun support. So the artillery would put the artillery on the landing zone. And then we're coming in, and normally it was 6 aircraft in formation with our troops. And when we get a little bit closer, then the artillery would stop and the gunships would roll in hot. And they would prep the area, and then we would follow with the door gunners firing. So that we'd come in and we'd land. Sometimes you would land with all 6 aircraft. Sometimes it was too small, so you could land 2 aircraft at a time. Sometimes it was even smaller, where you could only land 1 aircraft at a time. We had fire bases on the different hilltops around the area. And the fire bases were with howitzers, different kinds of guns that would fire for our support for landing zones. They would also do harassment firing at night for where they thought the Viet Cong were. And so we'd have to resupply them during the daytime also. One time we had to pick up some what they called PSP, which was corrugated pieces of metal that were very heavy. And we used those for landing fields. We used them for a lot of different things. And so I was a co-pilot, Peter pilot, and the pilot in command picked this stuff up. Now the aircraft's supposed to be able to pick up 4,000 pounds. Well, it was kind of tight. We didn't have a lot of power on the D model Hueys. But he got the thing off the ground. So when we were flying out to this fire base, he says, "You have the controls." So I got on the controls, and he's sitting there relaxing, and I'm flying out there. We get to the landing zone of this place, and he contacted them, said we're coming in. So they had a guy out there who was showing us where they wanted this PSP. And then they changed their mind. So when they changed their mind, they wanted it not here, they wanted it over here. So then I had to go over there. Well, I didn't have a lot of power. So in the aircraft, if you start losing power, you start losing RPM, and then the warning light starts flashing that you're losing power. And the technique then was to pump it. So you lower the collective so you could get more RPM, and then you pull it back in before you fall down. So he's telling me, pump it, pump it, pump it, and I'm pumping. That's like, the crew chief was laying on the floor, looking to where the load was based on the ground. And finally, we were just losing so much power. He says, put it down, put it down. Well, when he said put it down, I just cut the load loose. When I did that, this aircraft just skyrocketed up. The crew chief goes, "Oh!" And the people on the ground were running all over the place because this thing was coming down and there was dirt going all over the place. It looked like they had just been bombed. Everybody was running. And he gets on the control. He says, "What in the hell are you doing?" I said, "You said put it down." I said, "That's what I was doing." He said, "Didn't you fly sling loads in flight school?" I said, "No." He's looking at me, he says, "Everybody flew sling loads in flight school." I said, "I didn't. The day I was supposed to do it, the weather was bad, so they just signed it off and I went on to another training phase." He says, "I'll be damned." He says, "That's crazy." Anyway, that was exciting. So I learned how to fly sling loads the hard way in combat.